Okay.
Is this draft outline, which we think reflects the priorities and the emphasis that was given to us by the public outreach. Basically, the low-income fare.
By the way, this little green square here, I know it's backwards to you, but this green square, this is $5 million left. That's what they're gonna. That's what the Trimet execs will take and add whatever bureaucrats they feel like.
There at $12 million.
I mean, this outreach and this whole process, they're discussing the obvious, which is across the country, that people realize that if you're going to have transit, you're going to have reliable vehicles, you're going to have frequent service, and frequent service means 7 days a week.
Right, and not once an hour either.
I mean, attend any board meeting or watch any articles around the country. It is the same thing. I mean, it's like, gee, we're finally figuring out what's going on.
Well, transit.
The only thing I wish about these pie charts, that if it was a real pie, that I could actually get some substance from it.
Yeah, really.
By eating it.
Is already agreed to, $2.2 million for outside of Trimet, $3 million for shuttles, the 1% for high school transportation. And then about 60% of the total for service increases, or $29 million a year once the program is fully up and running. And as I said, we'll have scenarios for the committee to look at. A coverage scenario which has lower ridership but reaches, a broader geographic area. A ridership scenario which emphasizes developing areas that have the highest potential for ridership, and then a blended version, which is kind of what we typically do. We try to focus on ridership, but we also do some coverage. And the interesting thing about those three scenarios is the ridership scenario actually touches more people that are in those geographic areas that are high concentrations of low income, because there are more people in those areas as opposed to the more dispersed areas, the less populated areas that provide coverage, but not many folks are there. And then the remaining $5 million a year that's not allocated in this pie chart, we will put out a proposal to the committee that be allocated to the electric bus strategy. Because
these are scenarios. What he's talking about is not any implementation of when it's going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's scenarios.
I mean, if this plan and this methodology was incorporated in World War II, we would still be fighting the war. There would have never been a Normandy invasion because we were still thinking of scenarios. I mean, what you're seeing in front of you is maybe you will see some implementation. If you see anything by 2020, that'll be amazing.
I agree.
Implementation of that strategy requires an allocation of that scale in order to move forward with it in a realistic way. It actually requires more than that. It requires both the $5 million a year allocation and an allocation from what we call the triangle funds, which are one-time only dollars that become available because it takes us a few years to ramp in the low-income fare program and to ramp in the additional service.
Good. He just affirmed what I just said.
One-time only.
Right. He did. It's going to take a few years. Yeah, right.
Funds that can be used for capital, and we're going to recommend that about $20 million of that be allocated to the electric bus strategy to get it started. But that will be controversial because there will be folks who say, we should put that into one of those other priorities: student, low cost student fare, streetcar, or more Lyft ride connection services. So then finally, I mentioned that we've set aside, the committee's recommended setting aside $3 million for shuttle projects. About $1 million of that will go to existing shuttle programs that their funding is being discontinued because of the federal JARC program going away. So that includes Forest Grove, North Hillsborough, Tualatin, and Swan Island. So those will consume about $1 million of that $3 million to continue those.
So just so you can, I know you can't read this, but the subcommittee is Land Use and Transportation Director, Executive Director from the Chamber of Commerce, Administrative Service Manager from County Social Services, Assistant Manager. There's not one citizens on there, just so you know. These are all different executives or whoever the fuck they are. So just so you see that the people making all these decisions are not citizens. That's important.
And not the people who actually...
And nobody, right, yeah, nobody who uses...
They probably last time they had any real connection with transportation is that they saw a bus go by the front of their house.
Yeah, right. None of these people here ride on Trimet, I guarantee you. Okay, these are all what they call the, quote, leaders. The leaders. And basically, they're people that are connected, insider connections. They're all making six-figure salaries, most likely. And these are the people that are on this committee. And this is just more, this is like the Trimet board, you know. These are not actual people that use the service or even know anything about the service. Trimet board, they don't know anything. Those people that they appointed, they don't know anything about. Me and you know much more than they do.
That leaves $2 million for new shuttle programs or expansion of those existing shuttle programs, and we've established an advisory committee, a subcommittee of the full STIF committee to work on how do we want to allocate those funds, where do they want to go, what are the criteria that folks want to use to evaluate which are the better shuttle projects to try to fund. And in all likelihood, what we'll end up doing is the first year we'll allocate funding to study and analyze the next shuttles project.
You caught that too, did you? You caught that too. There you go, right there. Yeah.
You know, the only good thing about this, if you put it in perspective, is that the buses are ready to roll when they say they're ready to roll. Thank God it is not a horse and buggy, because if they said you're ready to roll, the damn horse would have died waiting to get out of the barn.
Right. Yeah, there's never an end to planning. When it comes to bureaucrats, they can plan as long as you can give them the plan, you know. That's how they make their livings, man.
In 30 years, we'll have actual rollout of those services. So, time frame.
I looked at this. Somebody posted this on Twitter, and I had no idea what this meant. Let's see if he explained it.
We are here in July. We're going back to the advisory committee to try to get their buy-in to some of the larger pieces of this puzzle to get basically that pie chart that I just showed you agreed to. There are a series of check-ins with that committee. We're going to do public outreach again once we have a draft plan so that we can get folks seeing how their input was analyzed. And then our goal is to bring to you in November a completed recommendation for Trimet and the region. That leaves us time for one trip around the horn, if you will. If you have concerns or want to make modifications to the plan, it can go back to the advisory committee and they can respond to that. And then we would look to submit in January.
I really wonder who makes these little charts. I mean, some person actually made that chart.
As I've told you, the safest job at Trimet is the person who makes charts, and the chief guy who makes the chart, the organization of all these different managers and sub-managers. The key of making these charts is to make sure that the lines of responsibility go nowhere.
Yeah, I wish you were. I wish you had done the part 5 of the meeting with me, because the guy that was giving the presentation, he got to the point where he had a chart up here, and it was like there was the head director, and then there was the executive director, and then there was the head supervisors, and he had this whole chart of all these bureaucrats and how they were going to improve service. You would have loved that, man, but unfortunately you weren't there.
For ODOT to begin their process of analyzing.
So what he's saying is basically Trimet's going to do a whole series of analyzations, and then ODOT's going to analyze Trimet's analysis. So we have multiple levels of bureaucracy in action here, huge levels of because
and it's now completely funded, fully funded, more than fully funded by the taxpayer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They just took the money.
So
right.
so take your time. There's no rush,
right,
because there's always money for the Monday meeting donut fund.
Right. There's no. They've got their tax. They've got their cash cow, and it's forever. And and so when you have these cash cows, and you have a technocracy running them, they're devoid of public accountability.
It's a lot of information. I bet you we have some questions here.
Let's see if anybody has any questions about that.
I always have questions.
I like
thank you for the presentation.
She's trying.
Bernie. So I think I just have some questions around that youth transit piece. That's really only about 1%.
I like her. I think she's going to be good. So far, I mean. Yeah. So far.
Mr. Warner is going to probably take her out to the shed and say.
Yeah, right. She's asking too many questions, definitely.
The total.
Yeah.
Amount that we're looking at. Yeah. And so I think one of my questions is there youth representation on that committee?
Yeah. Those are good questions.
And who are they, or what's the group?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a good question.
And then my second question is, there's over 150 school districts in Oregon. It's a lot of different issues and needs. And so being just another in my other volunteer hat as a school board member in North Clackamas, we have a lot of transportation challenges and also an overall school bus driver shortage. That's not only in our district, but in several other school districts. And so I think my question is just around how do we get to prioritizing various areas or counties, or even just down to the district level. And can you talk a little bit about what that process would look like around community engagement? Is there a process, like, are those discussions happening in terms of where do we want to focus that small sliver of the 1% funding to focus on?
Yeah, great question. So Opal is a member of the committee.
Oh, that's good.
So there, Maria Hernandez sits on the committee and
that's good to hear.
Is participating in the process, and so we've heard quite a bit from advocates for the low cost or free student pass program. The committee itself hasn't yet sort of addressed how they would want to recommend using those 1% funds. We are going to have a recommendation for them at our next, we hope we get to it at this coming meeting, which is to create a program that is Trimet district-wide, which essentially gives each high school an allocation from that 1% pool.
See? He's actually looking at trying to figure it out. He doesn't care. He just wants this testimony to be over. He's looking. He looks befuddled.
Actually, one of the root problems is that the wage and benefits that they're offering are not enticing enough. It's pretty obvious. If you can't attract people, maybe you're not offering enough money.
Oh, I've talked about that many times. How
and so none of the money or the allocation that they're talking about is going to working people.
That's a very good point. Now that you mention it, that's a very good point. You know, they're not doing anything to increase the living conditions or the operating pay of the people that are going to do the work. This is all. That's not even discussed here. You know,
there's no one on that committee addressing that problem. I guarantee you, of the 15 to 24 members.
I'm sure you're right about that. That's an interesting point.
It's a ceiling, so they can ask for less than that, or they can ask for that total amount. Now, if every district asks for the total amount, then there won't be enough money to go around. But we're anticipating that there will be a lot of school districts who don't ask for the full amount. And so we'll combine that with the funds that we already, so Trimet already allocates a little over $1 million a year to student transportation programs. That's mostly Portland Public Schools, but also David Douglas and Park Rose. So the 1/3, 2/3 scenario that we've had for a number of years, where if the district or the district in combination with somebody else provides 2/3 of the remaining cost of the pass after we've discounted it, then Trimet will do an additional 1/3. So we'll still have that program. This won't replace that. It'll be a supplement to that.
Would you like me to just sum up what he's trying to say?
Yes.
It's real simple. What we've been doing in the past is what we're going to do in the future, and what you get is what we're going to give you, period.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's right.
It's sort of two rounds.
If you don't play the game correctly and use Mother May I, you're out.
of conversations with the school districts. First round is...
I can't hear you. What'd you say?
I said, she's bobbing her head like what he's saying is really making any sense.
Yeah, right.
You can apply for as many passes as you want, up to your share of the free reduced lunch population of the region. And then if there are passes left over, we do a second round saying, okay, if you didn't get as many passes as you wanted, you can, again, proportionally apply for the passes that remain. That's the proposal. We don't know yet whether the committee is going to embrace that or not.
I see. That is going to be...
And don't worry, time you get to that fourth round of passes, the person is on his way and has graduated from college who doesn't need it anymore.
to the full SIF committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of timeline, just for the districts to apply, when would that fall?
Yeah, that's a really good point. We won't, because of the timeline for developing the plan and for ODOT approval, it won't be in place for this coming school year.
Right.
The lead time is just too long for us then to be able to get the programs in place with the school districts. So right now we're working with David Douglas and Park Rose in Portland on next year's plan for that program. And so it takes 6 to 9 months lead time to get those set up. So next year not, but the year after that.
I think the tie-in that I want to make, thank you, is school districts are having to look at our budgets now, every year, right? And so we are really also waiting on the state legislature to do something around K through 12 education. Transportation is, a big part of that. So the timing is very essential, and I'm glad to see that Trimet is committed to providing more access for students around transportation.
And then for next school year, the amount of funding would be half of this because of the way that the ODOT cash flow works. So for next school year, it would be a pretty small program, even if we were able to get it set up that quickly. Yeah.
Questions?
Yes.
He was looking at it. Let's see what he came up with.
I wanted to point towards the two exhibits that you presented today around the top 25 highest scoring census blocks and the employment destination analysis. First of all, thank you for providing that exhibit. I simply wanted to acknowledge that the mapping index that you're showing now on the wall has clearly delineated some areas that meet those equity index based on, looks like it's something that Trimet produced, and this is based on all of the factors that you were taking into account. I simply wanted to acknowledge that in light of today's conversations coming from Mayor Doyle, folks from the City of Hillsborough as well, acknowledging the undeniable population growth happening over here, they as well provided some exhibits that start to delineate some prioritization levels. So my question about it is, to what extent are we pulling in partners like City of Hillsborough, City of Beaverton to provide data that might help us determine, as we make decisions, how we prioritize or schedule the rollout of these expansion services? Are we bringing them in? I see them on the list of stakeholders. Are we bringing in their data? And can you talk a little bit about how the prioritization of all these different regions might play out?
Sure, yeah, happy to. So we are consulting with all of the local jurisdictions in the region and have been. The service plans that we are looking to develop as part of this funding come from work that we've been doing over the last 3 or 4 years to build what we call the service enhancement plans. So with this House Bill 2017 effort, we're really not looking to revisit the route planning process. We're really looking to allocate the funds at a high level, because we've done a lot of that planning around where the next route should go and where the community and the local jurisdictions have said they'd like to see the next level of service implemented. So yes, we are consulting with them. In terms of the data, I would say no, we're not really incorporating jurisdiction by jurisdiction data, because it's really hard then to have apples, compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. A lot of the data that they are using is the same data that we're using, which is a lot of it is census data, which goes into that 10-factor analysis that I talked about earlier. And so we are looking at where we can build routes that support local community plans as well, but also meeting the requirements of House Bill 2017. It's a little bit different in terms of the lens that House Bill 2017 puts over this, as opposed to our general Trimet general fund allocations. It really says you have to focus on these areas of low income and high concentrations of low income and minority communities, whereas our general fund doesn't have that. We have a Title VI requirement, but we can put service into places that have little or no low income or minority communities in them, if that's what the community wants the emphasis to be. So in this particular case, a little more emphasis on that than normal.
Thank you.
Okay, what he said was pretty important, but he tried to obscure it. What the real key was, he said, it's already taken 4 years just to get to this point.
What do you mean?
Hello?
What do you mean?
He said, in the planning process so far, it has taken already 4 years to get to this point before the 2017 fund. And it still will be another 2 years before any new routes might be actually deployed. So you're talking about 6 years. In 6 years, you see all these board members?
Yeah, they won't be there.
The only one that might still be there is Mr. Warner.
Probably.
So it's...
Yeah, I mean, I can't, we have to watch how this develops as time goes on. I'm not confident of any of this, because, I really don't. I don't know how this is going to.
If you play back, he said it's taken 4 years.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, and then now it's 2 more years before anything actually happens here. I know we have to just watch this and see what actually happens, and we will be watching. I have nothing else to do but watch this stuff.
Good report.
Good report, yeah.
I wish you luck with the committee at your next meeting. I look forward to hearing what their opinions are. And
that committee meeting should be broadcast too, like this. But it's not.
And I'm looking forward to hearing how they address the trade-offs, because you do have some good trade-offs that we need to understand. They need to understand. But
I don't know why the Trimet board has to be involved with that at all. If you want to know the truth, that's why are they involved? This is should be a different emphasis. Why is I guess it's just the way they set it up. But I mean, why? I mean, it should be new survey. I don't know, man. What do I know, right?
But I think you've come up with a good, baseline package they can pull apart. So thanks for the effort, and to all who have been involved in this.
Okay.
It's good.
All right, Bernie, bye.
Great, thank you. So what I'd like to do next is, I think it's Jennifer Kuzer-Steve's coming up from the Southwest Corridor.
Oh, the Southwest Corridor.
Okay,
all right, that was the other one I want to hear. This is the other project that's being crammed down citizens' throats.
And now to go back to a question earlier, when you said the 2017 bill did not include light rail.
Yeah. Well, they want another tax.
The reason it did not include was in 2018, which we are in now. Trimet originally had a separate bond package supposedly ready to go before the public to be voted on for this Southwest Corridor project.
Right. When
they realized, oh my God, we're going into the taxpayers' wallet already, Trimet said, okay, we'll put this bond measure off till 2020.
Yeah, and they also moved it to Metro because they know that Trimet has not had much.
And so the 2017 bill didn't include it because there was also a parallel bill bond measure running along. So why double dip? Yeah,
I suppose that's got something to do with it. I imagine that there's a lot of anti-light rail sentiment. there really is, and I know that a lot of the Republican members of the Senate and the House in Oregon probably were also against the light rail. And yeah, they had planned a whole nother tax referendum, but Trimet has not done well on tax referendums in the last decade or so. I know they knew that.
If you recall, the yellow line was essentially the interstate line.
Right, it was voted no.
It was voted down. Amazingly,
it got built anyway.
Put together a tax package and went around.
Yeah, and then the bus bond that didn't make it. So people are a little suspicious of Trimet.
Not much input.
Yeah, Trimet doesn't have they like to say they're very well liked. Everybody loves Trimet, but the facts are not. They can't get their tax increases.
If I may, just conscious of time.
As he said, we're really concerned about the taxpayer input.
Yeah.
And here, to get on the bus, let's if we can take the high-level version.
Now, the funny thing about this Southwest Corridor is how they're just going full speed ahead on this, spending millions and millions, and they don't even have the funding for it yet. Okay, they literally put the cart before the horse here, and they're going ahead and planning all this, and they don't have the funding. Usually in actual businesses, you got to have the funding before you start doing anything, but not in government.
Yeah, if you go to the bank and say, I'm going to build this wonderful office building, the banker says, good, how many leases do you have already signed for the square footage that you're going to build?
Yeah, you need to have the money up front, okay? You don't go ahead, spend millions of dollars on planning something if you don't have the funding.
And they've been spending millions for the last 5 years.
Yes, right. This is just going, and that's coming out of the general revenues, by the way. That could be going into bus service or light rail or anything. It could be going into anything, but instead it's going into this.
On this, or you suggest, or just do it on the bus.
Well, I don't know that I'd do it on the bus, but I
What?
can do my best to get through it very quickly, or I would offer that we could do it again.
What?
I actually think there's some important timelines coming your way. I think this is such a strategic issue for us, and we're now live in the public forum with open dialogue, with comments that some of you may be receiving already. If you haven't, I would suggest, Steve, we maybe move through this quickly. So
What's going on here?
That was Cody saying giddy up.
Okay, giddy up.
That's cowboy talk for giddy up.
So I will go through this quickly. We will be on the bus together for the tour, so if there may be follow-up questions we can do on
Well,
the bus.
they're taking them on a bus tour, huh?
No pressure, Steve.
Oh, thanks, Doug.
Between you and
there's pressure.
There's pressure. I'm just going to get right to it. So this project's actually been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Steering committee first met in 2016 and said, these are the corridor alternatives we're going to study. This is actually a calendar of this year. And so we completed the DIS. It was published in June. We're in the comment period right now. So that's why you've seen some testimony here and other venues that you may work in. We're looking to the steering committee to select a locally preferred alternative in August. Doug is a member of that steering committee along with jurisdictional representatives of the cities and counties we're in. You will be asked to approve that locally preferred alternative in October. And so you will have an opportunity to hear about some of the comments that have been received through the DIS, and we will brief you before that. Metro Council in November will actually be the final adopting member of the locally preferred alternative. That's a key because Metro's been running the project so far with our help with the engineering and technical work, as well as community outreach and other support that we give. At the LPA, it becomes our project, and Metro supports us in completing the final impact statement. Here's a map of our high-capacity rail networks. I'll just note that the dotted line is the line for the Southwest Corridor project. We'll get into that more. I think everybody's aware that we have some really great land use policies here, and these projects are all consistent with the Metro growth concept for 2040. Over 600,000 new residents are expected to...
By the way, I don't believe that. They intentionally... That's a false figure. That's not going to happen, okay? And
well, I mean, the Tiger Lady, who I recall the Tiger Lady, and the other gentleman who have testified in the last two board meetings have just torn apart their statistical analysis.
Right. They're just lying about that. I mean,
I mean, they're expecting, quote, a 35% increase in ridership.
Yeah, in population, and it's not going to happen. Okay, that's.
Well, no, we're not population. She pointed out that they in this PSI report that where did you get the number of 35%? No matter what line you've ever had, has never had an increase. They
were talking about ridership. He's talking about population, and all these population estimates are wrong. Okay, they're not going to happen like this. The immigration to Portland's already trickled off, and it will trickle more because you'll saturate. It's an expensive place to live, is what I'm trying to say, and people won't be moving here like they're predicting.
Be in the region by that time. So.
And anyway, it doesn't have anything to do with Trimet. They're not going to be riding.
I'm going to skip these. These are just some graphics that Metro has put together that talks about some of that growth in the region. 255,000 people actually work inside this corridor.
And light rail does not end congestion, but that's another lie that's used to get people to vote for light rail. It has very little effect on traffic at all. Maybe 1 or 2% is what I've read.
And a lot of them don't.
I mean, Trimet, only 12%, not even 12% of people ride it, and half of the riders are transit dependent anyway, So, I mean, what they'll do with this is they'll take people off the buses and put them on the trains, like they've done with everything else. It's not going to be.
It's essentially, that's what's is driving the ridership of the Orange Line is that you're essentially terminating a lot of the bus routes at Milwaukee, coercing them onto the rail.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what it is. They pushed them from the bus to the rail. That's what Trimet's been doing right along. It's
and then they proclaim, see, ridership is up.
Right. Yeah, no, they've just been doing, this is the way they've been able to get the capital project. It's just a way for the neoliberal elites to make money. I mean, let's be honest about all of this. This is not for the citizens. And citizens have to wake up someday and understand none of this is for you, okay? It's not for the citizens. It's for the neoliberal elites. When you give them that $3 billion, somebody's going to put that $3 billion in their pocket, okay? That's what it's really about. Who gets the money? Look at who gets the money, because that's what it's really about. So your commute will be 10 minutes faster during the rush hour, and you're going to give them $4 billion for that?
Live in the corridor, so they're they're traveling back and forth. So a lot of traffic each and every day, and they're projecting that congestion will grow to 13 to 17 hours during that day. So that's the AM peak, the noon rush, the PM peak. And
light rail won't do anything about that.
Pretty busy corridor. We always start with the land use plans, and so we incorporate local land use planning. In this case, Tigard has a high-capacity transit land use plan as well as a downtown visioning plan, and this high-capacity transit is key to that. It also incorporates the Barber Concept Plan, which is the City of Portland plan for how that corridor grows. These are not the station locations, but they're sort of the kind of neighborhoods or nodes that we're going to connect. So OHSU is obviously a tremendous employer and a big source of our ridership that we want to take advantage of. Connect to Hillsdale and Burlingame, Barber Transit Center. That's sort of on the edge of Portland, but that's a pretty key area, and we have some property there, and we see that as a great opportunity for transit-oriented development. We will connect close to PCC.
That's the other thing. The transit-oriented development, that's what they're really doing here, and they want to develop along these corridors. This is part of what some people refer to as Agenda 21.
And by the way, when he says we're close to PCC, the controversy over getting to PCC has been public testimony saying, we're here, why aren't you here?
Right.
And then if you want to really see full development of the real vision of developers, take a ride along the yellow line.
Yeah, you mentioned
and you will see, I drove along Interstate less than 2 weeks ago. I must have counted 6 to 7 new projects within 10 blocks that are just in the process of either starting or being just completed. So businesses, this is all development. And
right.
Trimet secured that land years ago.
Right.
But not right to PCC. So part of the project will include a shuttle service or some maybe autonomous vehicle that we have in partnership with Portland Community College. And then I mentioned downtown Tigard has a real positive, I think, outlook for their downtown and how they grow that into more of a kind of center for them. And then the ultimate destination is Bridgeport Village with a few stations in between. This will include bike and pedestrian connections. I mentioned Markham Hill. We're looking at a connector there. There have been several options, elevators. They're going to build some new buildings. We might collaborate with some of the work that they're going to do. Shared transit way. If you're familiar with the Orange Line, the harbor structure and the Tillicum Crossing has buses and trains on it. And what that does is it really allows our buses to behave in a kind of congestion-free zone.
It's only one bus that goes over there.
Ridership for the project.
They only allow one bus route over that bridge, by the way. So that's he's kind of lying. There's only the 9 goes over that, right? Or I mean, what bus?
I don't know.
I think there's only one bus route. I know that. I think maybe it's the 17. I forgot which one uses it, but the other buses are prohibited from running on that.
We're also able to kind of jump ahead of traffic through that shared transit way. Barber Boulevard has a tremendous amount of incomplete sidewalks and pedestrian access areas. So a big part of this project where we're rebuilding Barber Street will have protected bike lanes and we'll have sidewalks. Housing, we're working with our project partners to address some of the concerns that come with these transit investments. We've heard about displacements all over the city, and Barber Boulevard is actually a pretty diverse area when it comes to income levels and affordable housing types. And so we've been working as part of one of Metro's efforts called the Southwest Equitable Development strategy to look at how we can do different strategies to make sure that affordable housing remains in the corridor.
Here's another bond right here. Give us your money, give us your money, give us your money.
Right, that's the 2020 bond.
That's it? No, that's something. This is something else. This is a different bond. This is 653 million so-called affordable housing.
That's the housing bond that'll be coming up for a vote.
Yeah. Now, the government created a crisis, and now they want to solve it with your money.
And by the way, that bond measure is being promoted in that it is like only $80 for the average household based on a $250,000 house.
Yeah. Right.
You're going to be hard-pressed to find a $250,000 house in the city of Portland.
Yeah, that's for sure. Of course, I'm against it. I'm against all of these tax things. I don't care what it is, because I know the truth, and the truth is that money goes into somebody's pocket.
And if you drive along Barber Boulevard, they're already talking about, as he said, there's a diverse population and diverse older apartment buildings, which I guarantee you, which will be
destroyed.
Yeah,
they'll be gone. They'll be forced out. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the prime area that developers want. They want those old buildings so they can turn them into luxury, whatever. It's
well connected to transit, because we see transit as an alternative to the expense of an automobile, not to mention all the other things. We work across the city in property dispositions that we have for excess property. So we work with affordable housing providers and jurisdictions. And so we would employ those same techniques here. And look to turn over some of those staging sites that are right for affordable housing over to those agencies. Project benefits, that's in your packet.
Those agencies are developers. So.
Right. Well, yeah, what are we doing? What is a transit agency doing in the development business at all? This was all new. I mean, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, transit companies weren't doing any of this. This is all new stuff they brought in as the neoliberals have taken control of government. There's all new stuff.
Mentioned a lot of commuting back and forth between Portland and Tigard. 43,000 rides is what we're estimating through those metro models.
There's a statistic. Now that's, based on what we've heard from the other people, those estimates are consistently wrong. So they don't have any credibility in their ridership projections at all. Okay, their track record is a fail when it comes to rider. 1 in 5 commuters on max. That's not what's happening. Okay, they have 1 in 10 commuters on the system right now.
In 2035. Quickly.
Yeah, my wife's sitting here with me, and she pointed out that Metro can't use the condemnation procedure, but Trimet can.
Really? I didn't know that either. Really?
Yeah, and so, and also then to quote, for the greater good.
Yeah, the greater good. The good of the neoliberal elite.
And so, this project is, quote, pretty much a done deal. The only thing that is not going to make it a done deal is if the money doesn't arrive.
Yeah, right. It's not a done deal until the voters approve, and that is not guaranteed. Okay, if you remember, Tigard had a little referendum over it. I think the vote was yes by 3 votes or something. I mean, you know, people are really split over. Light rail is very divisive. It's a very divisive topic. The neoliberal elites are shoving it down our throats anyway. Even though everybody's like, put in bus rapid transit, and it's like nobody's getting upset about that, but they refuse to do that. They want light rail. And that's basically because it's there forever. You can't take it out. You're stuck on, you know, it expands the government, and you can develop on it. It's a developer's dream, because that means they can develop, and they'll always have government subsidized transportation next to the developments. Buses on the other, you can actually move buses if you can actually move the service.
I mean, as what the gentleman who testified with the young lady said, you know, if you took just a portion of this and devoted to buses, you could have tremendous service.
Yes, yeah. You know, I'm not a fan of Cascade Policy Group, but they did a great video on the Milwaukee line. They said for the same money that you spend on building that, you could have 24-hour-a-day service, 15-minute buses, luxury buses, and you'd have enough money to fund it for 20 years for the same money that it costs for the Milwaukee light rail. But
yeah, by the way, that turned out to be $220 million per mile.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, $220 million. Yeah, it's ridiculous. That wouldn't even be in the realm of possibility if it wasn't being forced down our throats, and government technocracies were just pushing it without any objections from, and the media, of course, is not looking into any of this. They're supporting the agenda. You know.
Anyway, we're probably getting.
I'm just going to come to the.
I do want to make a comment. He said they're going to take these board of directors on a bus tour.
Yeah.
I sure hope along the way that they pick up some of the finest passengers that they can sit next to.
All right, let's wrap it. There's only 9 minutes left.
Yeah. I mean, they can really experience what the... I don't want them to suffer complete shock, so I hope along the way that they have a good supply of nose clips so they don't have to smell.
Chase,
what happened? Look at that. Look on him.
get there. A lot of slides.
He's having.
From those 60 different route proposals and variations, are we inside Barber? Are we along the highway? We came up with the initial route proposal. And this is a new element that we've done that's ahead of a locally preferred alternative. It's a requirement of the Federal Transit Administration. What they want to do is they don't want the environmental impact statements to be voluminous, open-ended documents. They really want the communities to sort of narrow down what they want to study in the environmental documents. And so asking that a lot of the filtering and alternatives come as part of the draft. And so the staff has made a recommendation for the initial route proposal. That essentially is a diagram that shows that we connect downtown Portland to the Tigard Triangle, then over to downtown Tigard and down to Bridgeport Village. We had another option in consideration of the IRPs that went straight to Bridgeport. We had other options that went straight to Tigard, and so we found that this one was the most comprehensive in terms of connecting all the communities. Just to break it down, we had a choice between NATO and Barber. We chose Barber. Faster travel times, actually a little less cost, and really allows us to make that positive connection at OHSU. The location in Barber is sort of splits the difference between OHSU's
When he says OHSU, he means where down there by the aerial tram, right? That's what he means.
That's right, and that is already serviced by Portland streetcar.
Right, and some buses too stop there.
And some buses, so there's a way to get from there to Barber.
Yeah, no, this light rail line is not adding anything. It's just moving from bus to rail again. It's not adding service. It's not of any value in terms of adding anything extra here.
South Waterfront campus and their Markham Hill campus, so that was kind of the sweet spot there. We'll travel along Barber in the street, and so
in the street,
much like
oh my God.
The Interstate Max project, where you see light rail and shared traffic, that's what the Barber cross section would start to look like.
Oh my God. Jesus.
There are some historic viaducts in there, and although the project currently is not plan to replace those. We are working with our jurisdictional partners to look at betterments, some additional funding we can bring. Some would say it doesn't make much sense to bring light rail across Barber Boulevard if you're going to leave those old viaducts in place. So, I'm sorry.
And by the way, those viaducts, if you recall the one right past, if you're heading out just past the Hillsdale exit, that was closed for many years because it was about ready to fall down. and actually, if I recall, it was discovered by someone who was walking that one day realized that one end of the bridge was 3 feet away from the street, and called and said, "You might want to notice that you got a gap here." And they sent someone out and said, "You're right, sort of. No more heavy traffic, no more trucks, no more buses for like 2 or 3 years until that was fixed, or at least shored up." And in no way can those viaducts support the weight of light rail without being completely redone. And so what he's talking about is to shift the cost of that not to Trimet, but to those local jurisdictions. If you want it, you're going to pay for it.
I see.
So then sort of at the Burlingame area, one of the choices, again, do you run inside the highway or do you run along Barber Boulevard? Essentially run through Barber Boulevard to the transit center. Here are a couple of refinements that we've done. So the IRP, we're actually doing refinements as we go. These are really about minimizing impacts and reducing cost. And so the refinements are key to sort of hitting that cost target that we'd like. One of the refinements is up at what we call the crossroads where Barber Boulevard and Capitol Highway converge. We're actually going to do a flyover structure over that intersection, because if we start to touch those structures, you open up that whole intersection and you're essentially rebuilding part of I-5. So this is again a kind of a cost and scope mitigation measure. Similarly, we're looking at some refinements as we hit the edge of Tigard. And so that's an area of refinement that from the IRP that we're looking at would actually bring a station and park and ride right on Highway 99, right on Pacific Highway there at 68th Avenue. We see that as a real benefit for folks that are west of Tigard and Pacific Highway, so they can use that park and ride to access the map. Ash Street is what's shown in the IRP. There was pretty significant impacts to affordable housing and other property impacts in Tigard. This also kind of takes us out of the direction of travel. We sort of kind of double back a little bit, and so we lose a little time. So we looked at a modification that sort of straightened that out and shortened it a little bit. And so one of the, I think, impacts is we're not going to downtown Tigard, but we're right on the edge of downtown Tigard at Hall. And as a kind of an architect in the past, an urban designer in the past, to me that's fascinating that you place it in a way where the city can grow to it, not put it in the middle of a city that already exists.
All right, Neal, I'm running out of clip here, so I want to wrap it up. There's no point in listening to the end of this. So any final comments? I mean, he's just going to go on.
What he's just discussing is look what happened in Milwaukee. Max Light Rail doesn't serve Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. You have to walk. You have to walk. Yeah.
And there's no way, quote, for Milwaukee to grow to the light rail,
yeah,
unless they're going to put up structures in the middle of the road.
That's right. That's a very good point. It doesn't serve. Yeah, it goes right by downtown. Yeah, it doesn't. You can't even get to it.
And so there's one stop. So long as it's not raining or snowing or blowing, you can walk over to catch the light rail.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, and that's a good illustration of how this project really had nothing to do with commute. You know, they built it because they wanted to get the money. They put it in, and you can't even get to it from downtown. You have to walk to it. So I mean,
and I'm sure where you're going, if you actually see the photos, you're probably seeing potential of new development, which will have nothing to do with downtown Tigard, but new apartment buildings.
Yeah, it's right. This is a developer's dream, you know. And I say, you know, go ahead and build the goddamn thing, but asking us to pay to build it, that's crazy. We have to pay to operate it. Why should we pay to build it too? It's find the money in the current tax streams. If you can't do that, too bad. No, don't bother. I wouldn't vote yes on this, but who am I, right? All right, Neal.
Well, all right, you take care. I'll be back available on Sunday.
Okay,
right,
so you're leaving tomorrow? Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay, I'll see you on Sunday, and you'll have a nice trip.
Okay, bye.